Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We are in the Labyrinth, the fantasy trip, the In the Labyrinth book by Steve Jackson Games. This video is going to go over races you could play as a player, and I might even go over the races from the old version of the game too. So, first off, you have humans. Humans would have a strength of 8, a dex of 8, an IQ of 8. And then you'd have 8 points to distribute amongst those stats. So you could end up with a strength. If you did it evenly, which I do not recommend, you would end up with 2 in each of them and 2 more points to spend. So 2 more would be 1 higher. So you'd have 2 stats with 11s and 1 with a 10. The reason I don't recommend it is because you want to be a little bit better at one of your stats, so that way you have an easier time rolling. If you're going to do any combat, you're rolling under dex. So I always recommend that dex start like between 10 and 12. If you're going to play a high dex character, go ahead and increase it more. Because you can always, as you level, increase your strength and regain that missing ground. But you'd have a harder time hitting things when your dex is under 10, because you're rolling 3 6-sided dice. Your average result, according to statistics, would be a 9 or a 10, but in gameplay, it's like if you were playing D&D, it's like saying the DC for everything you're rolling is like a 15, and you get no real bonuses if your stats were 10s. Next is elves. Elves will have a strength of 6, a dex of 10, an IQ of 8, and 8 points to spend. Their movement is 12, where humans would have a movement of 10, if unarmed or in cloth. Now, elves' movement is 10 if they're wearing only leather armor. See page 77. Elves are a very ancient race of average height, but more slender than men. They are not common. Still, they are influential. Most keep to their own cities among forests or mountain peaks, but a few come adventuring. These tend to be less proud and aloof than the others. Elves do not get along well with dwarves. About the only thing that elves and dwarves agree on is that orcs are objectionable. Elves are not mercantile in nature. Very few have business sense. Elves also have an inbred horror of insects and crawling things, and fight them at a -3 dex penalty. So if your dex was 10, you'd be at a 7 dex to try to hit those. An elf character starts with a strength of 6. Everything else that I already talked about. Okay. Dwarves are next. Dwarves have a strength of 10, a dex of 6, an IQ of 8, plus 8 extra points. So if I was playing the dwarf, I'd probably not increase the IQ unless I was trying to play a wizard dwarf, and just increase my dex and leave my strength alone. But then again, I like playing high dex characters at that point, at the beginning. So see dwarves. Dwarves average less than 5 feet tall, but are very stocky and strong. They prefer underground cities, but many live elsewhere. They get along well with humans, but dislike elves and goblins and hate orcs. And the feeling is mutual. When a dwarf is being dignified, he can seem as proud and aloof as an elf, yet he can also be boisterous and earthy as a human tavern brawler. Indeed, most dwarves love drink almost as much as they love gold. And dwarves do love gold. This accounts for the ancient enmity between dwarves and dragons. No dwarf can ever have a friendly reaction to a dragon, and vice versa. All dwarves are motivated largely by the desire for riches, especially gold. A dwarf who passes up a chance to enrich himself honestly, if he is even concerned about honesty, is almost surely acting out of character. Another key note for a dwarf carry immense loads. The maximum load for a dwarf is double that for a human of equal strength. Next is halflings. They have a strength of 4, a dex of 12, and an IQ of 8, plus 6 extra points. They automatically have the thrown weapon talent at no cost. Halflings. Halflings are small, peaceful, and usually pot-bellied. Most are very stay-at-home sorts, but some go adventuring, and a few are to be found in any large city. Almost all halflings are good people. Though they are nimble, hardy, and skilled with missile and thrown weapons, halflings might have vanished ages ago if not for one thing. They are very likable. No race is the special enemy of halflings, possibly because no one is especially afraid of them. Only the cruelest individuals or races will give a halfling much trouble, and even then they are likely to rob or enslave them rather than murder them out of hand. Therefore, a halfling receives +1 on any reaction roll with an intelligent creature or normal animal. Due to their excellent hand-to-eye coordination, halflings automatically have the thrown weapons talent. Because of their small size, they have a -2 dex when fighting giant-sized opponents with other types of weapons, and giants have a -2 against halflings. And the halfling starts with a movement of 10. What was the dwarf's movement starting? Doesn't say, so their movement's also 10. Okay, after that we got orcs. They have attributes like humans. So orcs would start with a 8 in strength, 8 in dex, 8 in IQ, and 8 points to spend. So from there you could lean into the stereotype and play a dumb orc, or you could play a really smart orc. But let's see what it says about orcs. Orcs are closely related to men. Their prehistoric ancestors, Orcanthropus, dominated many alternate worlds during the Neanderthal days. Here on Earth, only their fossilized remains, known as Piltdown Man, survive. Orcs are very similar to men, just nastier. As a race, they are even more variable than men. They tend to have more and coarser hair, sharp teeth or actual fangs, and claws instead of fingernails. I always describe them as having tusks too. They are also tough, greedy, and quarrelsome. They are occasionally good orcs, but even these tend to be harsh, uncompromising military types. Orc cities and villages are scattered throughout Sidri. Some are powerful kingdoms, others are rude clusters of mountain huts. Indeed, orcs might be a dominant race where they not so quarrelsome. They have no particular issue with men, especially criminals and adventurers. However, both elves and dwarves despise orcs and may attack them on sight. Orcs make excellent guards and soldiers if led by someone they respect. That is, fear. An orc army is a terrifying thing. Orc characters are created. Orcs are excellent villains for the game master's labyrinth, but playing a surly, vicious, lying, sneaky, rotten orc, trusted by none, of course, can be fun. Remember that a normal orc character would get experience points for obnoxious words and deeds and lose for civilized, weak actions. And then last, we have goblins. Goblins have a strength of 6, a dex of 8, IQ of 10, plus 8 extra points. Goblins, like orcs, are often found in the GM's bad guys in the labyrinth. But a goblin character can be very interesting to play. Goblins are green-skinned humanoids, usually short and slender, with long heads, pointed ears, and long, tapering fingers. They are proud, intelligent, and crafty. A goblin will never go back on his word, even if the promise was forced out of him. However, they delight in keeping the letter of a forced promise while still finding a way to trick you. Many goblins are wizards, and all love gold and jewels. Most goblin cities are found in out-of-the-way places because they are small and smart. Goblins are distrustful of the larger and more aggressive races. They fight with dwarves often and may be hostile towards men or orcs. However, since goblins always keep their word, there are successful goblin merchants in many places. Okay, here's the old table where you could roll your random characters. Don't know if y'all can read my handwriting, but I'll go over it. So you'd roll the 3 dice normally. If you roll a 3, you get a giant. The race of giants live a long way away from territory inhabited by humans and near human types. Giants are basically simple, peaceful, 9-foot-tall farmers. The few that appear in human lands are almost always outcasts, which explains why they are usually surly and murderous. Giants have a movement allowance of 10, strength ranging from 25 to 40. So if this was a starting character, it'd be 25. Dex of 9 or 10, so it'd start at 9. And an IQ of 7. 2, in the case of a genius giant, 10 at its highest. So your IQ is capped at 10. And I would start it at 7 for a starting character that rolled a giant. Since giants are so clumsy, the greatest treasure you can offer one is something to increase dex. A few giants are wizards, slow and without many spells, but powerful. Giants usually fight with clubs and without armor. On occasion, too, they fight with swords or axes, or with great cesti strapped to their hands. Since giants are humanoid figures, their unarmed combat weapon use is as though they were human. If the GM allows, giant characters start with strength of 25, dex of 9, and an IQ of 7. They can never increase their dex or IQ over 10 without magical items. And that's playing a giant. Now, on the top end of the table, 17, you get to play a gargoyle, and an 18, you get to play a reptile man. So we'll go with gargoyle. These tough, ugly humanoids have a silicone metabolism. Their bat-like wings are much too small to carry them. A gargoyle averages over 300 pounds, but the gargoyle doesn't know this and flies anyways. Actually, they have a limited ability to levitate, but they don't know that. Gargoyles live in small tribes in mountainous areas, hunting and eating rocks. They especially love to inhabit ruins. They prize jewels and can sometimes be hired as guards by the wealthy. They are tough and trustworthy, though sullen. A gargoyle begins with a strength of 13, dex of 11, and IQ of 8, no points added. IQ will never go higher than 10. Such brilliant gargoyles often become wizards, wanderers, or both. Movement allowance is 8 on the ground and 16 when flying. Gargoyles can stop 3 hits per attack by the virtue of their stony skin, so their armor is considered 3. They normally fight with their hands, 2 dice damage, so 2d6 damage, but those hired as guards will use weapons. They do not favor thrown or missile weapons, though they can fly overhead and drop rocks on you if the situation warrants. Since gargoyles' gallbladders are useful in several potions, gargoyles are often suspicious of strangers' intentions. They react to strangers at a -1. So you roll a d6 when you first interact with something, and you get a 1, either a bonus or nothing, or a penalty to the dice. And the lower it is, the worse their reaction is. Next is Reptile Man. The Reptile Men are not at all related to humans, dwarves, elves, and their kindred. They evolved from dinosaurian stock. Indeed, a reptile man looks like nothing so much as a small dinosaur. About 7 feet tall, heavily built, with shining scales, heavy claws, powerful jaws, and a large tail. A reptile man is formidable indeed. Reptile men are not at all common in known parts of Sidri. Because of their fearsome appearance, they are generally disliked. Any reptile man has a -1 on any reaction roll except one made by other reptile men to his presence or request. Perhaps because they are often shunned, reptile men are fiercely loyal to their friends or employers. A traitorous one is unknown. Around those not in their confidence, though, they are reserved, even touchy. If insulted, a reptile man will attempt to challenge the offending party to a duel. Since a duel with a reptile man is often a messy form of suicide, most beings try to conceal their dislike beneath masks of civility. A reptile man starts with a strength of 12, a dex of 8, and an IQ of 8, with 4 extra points to be added to any of these. His MA is 10, so his movement allowance is 10. He fights in all ways like a human or other being, except that because of his jaws and claws, he does double the hand-to-hand damage of that of a human of equal strength would. His claws give him a +2 in bare-hand combat. He can use his tail as a 1-die weapon against any one foe in his rear hex. Since this counts as an attack, he is at a -4 dex on both attacks if he also uses a weapon that turn. A reptile man makes a very good fighter character. His drawback is the fact that he will have to fight constantly. And that'll cover the majority of the races that are playable for the fantasy trip. If y'all have any questions, put them in the comments below. Hope y'all enjoyed hearing about them. Until we all game again, guys.